What is going on, Colts Nation? Welcome back to another episode of Bring the Juice. Your guys, Cody and Derek, back for another one, guys. And in today's episode, we are going to look at 5 of the most underrated players on the Indianapolis Colts. And we're obviously doing this before free agency, so some of these guys are set to become free agents if they don't re-sign with the Indianapolis Colts, although we hope that the guys that are do re-sign because they are extremely valuable to what the Colts do. We've done this video every year. We had done, Derek, just 3, but I think just with how many different guys on this roster are critical to their success, we could get 5 guys that we could talk about. And ironically enough, Derek, 2 of the guys on this list made PFF's most underrated free agents set to be free agents in 2024. So, of course, we had to add those guys on here as well. But let's hop right into it, Derek. We'll start with the offense. And funny enough, we have 5 guys. Only one of them is on offense right now. And that player is Braden Smith, the offensive tackle for the Colts. Missed a lot of time this year, Derek, with just different injuries and things of that nature. But, Derek, I think it was pretty apparent when Braden Smith was on the field versus not on the field, you saw how much the Colts missed him. I mean, in pretty much every aspect, in running the football and also in pass protection as well. When Braden Smith was playing, he was actually the highest graded player on the Indianapolis Colts offensive line, and he is just so critical to what they do. And so you do wonder, man, if Braden Smith would have stayed healthy, how much better could this Colts offense have been, with having their franchise right tackle, because he's just so critical. And nobody ever talks about Braden Smith. But I think, Derek, you saw just the drop-off between him and, Blake Freeland, who, again, Blake Freeland's a rookie. He's going to learn. He's going to grow. But still, you saw how critical and how, important Braden Smith is to what the Indianapolis Colts do offensively. And you really saw life without him. And it wasn't pretty, Derek. It wasn't pretty without Braden Smith at right tackle. So definitely a very valuable piece on this offensive line.
Yeah, and that was kind of the thing for the entirety of the offensive line. There was a good chunk of the offensive line that had missed some time. Ryan Kelly did, and, Bernard Ryman even missed some early in the season. So him, and you had obviously Ryan Kelly and then Braden Smith missing time, a good chunk of time as well. It felt like this season there was more weeks where Indy had more changes at O-line than they had actually the whole O-line playing together as one. So it definitely can change a lot of things up. And despite of that, Indianapolis still had a really good offensive line production this year. But it did definitely show a difference in how well Indianapolis can run the football, particularly with Braden Smith out there versus when he's not. And Blake Freeland, unfortunately, got a dose of reality when it came to, playing in the NFL, because if you're the rookie, right, and you don't have that sort of situation in hand, and you have to face guys like TJ Watt, Aaron Donald, and Myles Garrett, and all of these different guys, unfortunately, that's just going to be something that's going to really hurt you going down the road. That's going to be very difficult to be able to handle. And I think it kind of reminded some people who were on that, Braden Smith should just leave category, that, I mean, at the end of the day, there's not a lot of Braden Smiths out there. I get he may potentially be paid too much versus the time that he misses. I get that, but Cody, you were a big proprietor of it during the season, and I totally agree. Like, when he's out there, you just can tell the difference in both the pass blocking and run blocking, just how much more effective Indy is when Braden Smith is out there. The offensive run production increases by a lot, and you don't get those 3-4 sack games from defenses when Braden Smith's out there, because there's no longer a weak link on the offensive line right there. So it definitely makes a huge, huge difference, especially since teams were getting used to the fact of putting their best guy on Blake Freeland. And it was kind of hard for Indy to be able to run a lot of concepts the way they wanted to, because you had to always have another guy there to chip the edge to give Blake Freeland a chance to be able to win his rep, right? And keep Gardner Minshew from falling. So it definitely is a guy that a lot of Colts Nation feels that the Colts either need to move on from, or Braden Smith just needs to have a reduced role. And I just completely disagree. I think it sucks that he's not healthy a lot of the time. Braden Smith, as of recently, has had a lot of injuries that he's missed a lot of time with for unseen circumstances. But at the end of the day, he's still such a valuable piece when he is out there. And it would be just a really bad idea for Indy to be looking to get rid of Braden Smith simply because of that.
Well, I mean, people act like he's missed like, 7, 8 games per season for the last couple of years. And he's just a season removed, Derek, from playing in 16 games. So it's not like this guy year in and year out is completely just missing, a good chunk of the season. This is the first time we've really seen him miss this amount of time. I really do feel like it's been just like something with Braden Smith where people have acted like he's just never been available. And it's like he had a hurt season. He had a bad season when it came to the injuries. But traditionally, I mean, he's played multiple years where he's played 15, 16 games, so I just don't necessarily agree, with Braden Smith moving on from him, because you're right. Like, who are you going to replace him with? Like, seriously, like, who are you going to replace Braden Smith with that can give you anywhere near the type of production he gives you? And this is a guy with Braden Smith that, people forget. I mean, he was gutting it out, man, at the end of the season. He was trying his darndest to be out there for the Colts. And it came to the point, in the final week of the season where he just couldn't do it anymore. His body physically could not handle it. But he was pushing himself. It's not like this guy didn't want to be out there, but he was really pushing himself to be out there. And so that's the type of thing you want from your players, guys that want to be out there and, will do everything they can to, put their body on the line, if you will, in certain ways. And that's what we saw Braden Smith doing, playing through some obvious pain, but, feeling like he could do it and still play at a high level. And we saw what the Colts were able to do when he was out there. So he's definitely a very valuable piece to what the Colts do. And now the good thing is he can heal up and hopefully he's good to go moving forward. But yeah, definitely a guy that it's crazy to even consider the idea of moving on from Braden Smith at this point, considering how good he is. I would argue, Derek, one of the best right tackles in the NFL when he's healthy. He's playing at that kind of level right now when he's on the field. And so it's just kind of ridiculous to want to move on from him right now, especially because you don't have that contingency plan right now for Braden Smith. And again, you have already a good set list of needs, right? Do you need to now create another hole on your roster, So I wouldn't be opposed if the Colts went and got an offensive lineman in the draft. Like, I wouldn't be opposed to that, a mid-round guy, because I know it's a really good offensive line class. Potentially start trying to figure that out and have him compete with Blake Freeland for that backup spot, because if Braden Smith misses more time, you need to be confident in that guy to be, the guy can step in and play at a pretty decent level. But still, Braden Smith, when he's on the field, no doubt he makes the Colts better. He's underrated. Nobody talks about him as one of the best right tackles in the NFL, but I really do believe that he is. All right, let's move on now to the defensive side of things. We got 4 guys we're going to talk about today on the defensive side of things. The first guy that made the PFF most underrated free agents heading into 2024, Grover Stewart. I mean, we got to talk about Grover Stewart, Derek, because just as how important Braden Smith was and the drop-off we saw when he wasn't on the field, we saw the same way with Grover Stewart. When Grover Stewart was and was not on the field for the Colts, when he was playing and when he was suspended, I mean, you saw the difference. Teams were able to do really whatever they wanted running the football without Grover Stewart in there. One of the best one-techs in the NFL. I know he's going to be 30, but again, those guys can play into their mid-30s pretty easily. So do feel like Grover Stewart's a guy, has to be a top priority to bring back. And I do think he's not talked about a whole lot, when talking about some of the best interior defensive linemen. But I think, Derek, he has proven over the years that he's an absolute monster in the middle. He's an elite run defender. And I think we need to put some more respect on his name.
Grover definitely is probably one of the most impactful people on this entire defense and pretty much this entire team. We've seen the difference between, what the team looks like when he's not on the field versus when he is. I mean, just look at the rushing numbers every single game that he was missing. The Colts were giving up almost 100, pretty much 150 yards a game running the football wise when Grover Stewart wasn't there. And then when it came to him being back, they were really only giving up about 110. So, 40-yard difference, all because of one man. So it definitely is a very big thing. And, a lot of people, I've had my things to say about Grover, but I only ever really say those things about it due to the lack of a pass rush production. But at the end of the day, I still realize the value of Grover Stewart. It just all depends on who you're specifically talking to. But I mean, people definitely need to understand that Grove's really not going anywhere. And I highly doubt that Indy's going to let him walk because, it just to have an interior guy that's so pivotal to what you're trying to do in your run stopping defense, to let someone like that go would definitely be a detriment to the team. So it definitely is a surprise to see how many people are just saying to willingly move on from Grover Stewart, despite all the great things that Grover Stewart can do for you, especially stopping the run.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yep, Grover definitely needs some respect, and no doubt about that. All right, let's continue on talking about Derek. I know one of your favorite players on the Colts, guy you've been a big proponent for the last number of years, EJ Speed, who got obviously a big role increase when the Colts released Shaq Leonard in the middle of the season. He's just been a guy that, homegrown guy that the Colts drafted, back in 2019. He started out more special teams type of guy, but he's just kind of over the years, Derek, he's started to get more reps on the defensive side of things. And then this year was a full-time starter for a good chunk of the season. And you really have seen EJ Speed blossom into a really good linebacker. And I don't think a lot of people are talking about EJ Speed. I mean, a lot of people talk about Zaire Franklin, what he's able to do with a tackle record, deservedly so, of course. But EJ Speed's I think he is so impactful, Derek, to what the Colts do. And he is such a good player. And I feel like he just makes some of those impact plays that really change the course of games when he's on the field. And so I think we need to talk about EJ Speed more because nobody's really doing it.
Yeah, I feel like EJ Speed has been given an unfair shake with. I know a lot of people like to talk about EJ Speed and how he's made a lot of mental errors at times throughout the last few seasons that obviously everyone notices. And of course, the tackle numbers are never as astounding as someone like Zaire Franklin's is, but you got to understand this guy was a 5th round talent out of a small school and ended up, having to wait 2 years in order to be able to, or 2 or 3 years before he even got a chance to actually come in and be a starter at linebacker. And I mean, people don't want to accept it, but he is one of the best coverage linebackers in the NFL. I don't care what anybody says. It's the true facts. He's literally one of the top 15 best linebackers in the NFL when it comes to covering guys. So, I mean, there's nothing more you can really ask for. Zaire Franklin's the run stopper, and EJ Speed is the guy that can cover guys out of the backfield or at tight end because he has that speed and that length that allows him to be able to do such things. He's a great complementary piece to a Zaire Franklin. He is not an elite linebacker, but he has a lot of traits that you desire in your second linebacker, and he does a lot of great things. And I don't think that and especially for the contract that you do have him on, I mean, Indy has such a great contract for him as a second linebacker, and I just don't understand where the hate comes from with some people in EJ Speed for sure.
Yeah, he's definitely a key part to that defense, and he makes a lot of plays, like you mentioned. He's obviously the most gifted linebacker I would say the Colts have on their roster, just with the size, the athleticism, all that stuff. And he's starting to put it together and play at a pretty high level at the NFL. We wonder with those small school guys like EJ Speed, like, will it ever click? Because the competition level obviously is so much different coming out of Tarleton State as opposed to coming out of I don't know any of the really big schools that we know. It's just a different type of thing. I mean, even Zaire Franklin with Syracuse, it's different. So it's great to see EJ Speed, one of those guys that was successful in making that transition to the NFL. So definitely great to see there. I think we need to definitely talk about EJ Speed more than we do. All right,
Right.
two more guys here. Two guys set to be free agents as well, Derek. The first guy, Kenny Moore, who I think, Derek, out of all the free agents the Colts have, maybe outside of Michael Pittman, I think he's pretty much a lock to come back at this point. I mean, for goodness sake, Derek, you have the guy on your building right now, on the side of your building, and that you just put him on there. Whenever obviously the Shaq Leonard stuff happened, you replaced that with Kenny Moore. And he has just been so pivotal. Again, another guy that Chris Ballard found, really late. Nobody really, gave him a chance. He was an undrafted guy. The Colts found him. They claimed him off waivers, gave him an opportunity, and he hasn't looked back since. And he has been one of the best slot corners in the NFL ever since he became a full-time starter in 2018. Again, didn't have a great season in 2022, but a nice bounce-back season for Kenny Moore overall. Just, really cool to see him take that step in year number one and then, kind of have that bounce back year because we really didn't know if he was going to be able to do that in kind of a newer, different type of defense with Gus Bradley. But it's been great to see him, kind of rebound and kind of be that voice in that captain, if you will, in that young secondary room, in that young cornerback room that had two rookies starting last year. And another guy, in Dallas Flowers, who, was an undrafted guy a couple years ago. So Kenny Moore, so valuable to what the Colts do. And I don't think we talk about Kenny Moore enough and just his value with this Colts team, obviously as a player in the slot, but also Derek just as a leader in that locker room.
Yeah, I mean, we've talked about it so many times over this last year, the amount of a difference that a year makes for Kenny Moore. And he has now reascended himself as the best secondary player on this team. And it's not even really close. I truly know that people who don't want Kenny Moore back are simply living in the past or refusing to accept the impact that Kenny Moore actually has on this team. I know a lot of people said, like, Kenny Moore didn't make a huge difference this year for this team, which is complete and utter nonsense. I mean, this was a guy that, again, had 3 interceptions on the year, had 2 pick-sixes in 1 week, was definitely back to being the typical Kenny Moore that we are typically used to seeing. His overall grades for slot corners was still overall some of the best of anyone in the entire National Football League. So it's hard to really pick apart a reason as to why Kenny Moore shouldn't be on this team for the next several years, especially with Indy trying to rebuild this secondary as we currently sit. For anyone to sit there and suggest that Kenny Moore is anything but a leader and a great player for this for the secondary is just utter nonsense. I really think that it's very valuable that we keep Kenny Moore in this building while this young secondary is trying to find its identity. And it's so important because we have so many needs for Kenny Moore right now. And that's why he's very underrated because a lot of people want to move on from Kenny Moore, but I just can't find a reason as to why.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Definitely want to keep Kenny. Hopefully he stays here with Indy for the next number of years because he is so valuable to what they do defensively. All right, the last guy, another free agent potentially for the Colts here. Hopefully the Colts bring him back as well. A guy off of his best season of his young NFL career. That is Julian Blackmon. He was a third-round pick for the Colts in 2020. Derek initially started off as free safety for the first couple of years of his career. Last year made the transition to strong safety. And I think we all saw, Derek, the impact that Julian Blackmon had out there multiple plays where he basically sealed the game for the Colts on a couple different occasions. We saw him do that a little bit in his rookie season, a couple times actually his rookie season where he sealed the game, had the game-winning play, and we saw it this year again. Some shades of rookie Julian Blackmon, who we would all say, Derek, he was right in the running for defensive rookie of the year. If it hadn't been for Chase Young doing what he did, I mean, we really do believe that Julian Blackmon could have won that award or been a serious contender because he was playing that well. So again, Julian Blackmon's still extremely young, in his mid-20s. A guy that we don't talk about a whole lot, but I think Derek is a very underrated safety. I think the Colts will be very wise to bring him back. Again, the only concern with him is the health, which we've talked about before. He has missed a decent amount of time as well. But when he's on the field, Derek, there's no doubt that he brings just a stability back there, and it really helps, especially because just like corner, outside of him, it's a lot of youth, a lot of young guys trying to figure it out. So give me your thoughts on Julian Blackmon and what makes him so underrated and so important to what the Colts do defensively.
Yeah, I feel like the one and only reason that anyone wants to just move on from Julian Blackmon is simply due to the fact that he's missed some games. I mean, that first year really didn't miss any. Second year, he missed a good chunk of the year.
With that injury,
serious injury. Was that injury where he went down with it. Yep. And then the third year, had missed a few games as well. And then obviously this last year missed those last 3 games due to, I can't even remember what the injury was at the top of my head, but he obviously missed the last 3 games, which really hurt the Indianapolis Colts going down the stretch. But I mean, for me, I just think if the only reason that you're suggesting that Julian Blackmon not be an Indianapolis Colt is simply due to the fact that you're not going to rely on him to remain healthy, then we can make the same argument with Braden Smith, right? Like when they're on the field, they impact the game in a huge way. Julian Blackmon has had tremendous seasons as a safety for the Indianapolis Colts. And let's not forget that this year he had moved to strong safety to be able to support that role in which Indy was trying something new and had statistically his best year of his young career so far. So, I mean, this is just a guy that is still so young and is only continuously getting better. And he's just doing so many great things. And, we talk about like some of these other like high-end safeties that might be hitting the free agent market. And, Indy might want to have the chance to do that. But, I think because of that, everyone keeps saying that you just need to move on from Julian Blackmon. But there's only a handful, not even really a handful of these guys that have more interceptions than what Julian Blackmon's had in his young career. And, for the tackles' sake, the overall production, yes, the injuries definitely are a concern. That's why you don't want to give him a top of the market deal, which I don't think they're going to end up giving him anyway. But at the end of the day, still, when he's out there, he is almost as productive, if not as productive, as most of the top safeties in the league, honestly. So, I mean, there's just no reason to suggest that Julian Blackmon not remain with Indianapolis. And that's why he's so underrated, because people just don't accept that this guy does have a lot of great production and has been a great safety for this team ever since he's been here. Just hopefully, you just hope that he just doesn't get injured as frequently as he does going forward.
Yep. So let us know your guys' thoughts on these 5 players that we talked about that we believe are the most underrated players for the Indianapolis Colts. Let us know your thoughts. Very curious if you guys have anybody on the list that we didn't include, or if you say, I don't know if that player is underrated. Would love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. But guys, that'll do it for this one. Thank you so much for tuning in. And as always, guys, go Colts.